The whispers started with a single blurry photo, Yaman stepping out of a luxury car late at night in Rome. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't just the timing, or the fact that he had just wrapped an interview earlier that day. It was the woman walking beside him, Sara Bluma. Known for her elegance, mystery, and her past connection to Cannes, Sara had stayed out of the spotlight for months. Yet here she was, walking shoulder to shoulder with him, both wearing discreet smiles that told 1,000 untold stories. The photo, snapped by a paparazzo outside a private restaurant near Piazza di Spagna, instantly set social media ablaze. New romance, one outlet wrote in bold. Cannes and Sara, together again? Another questioned. Within hours, hashtags like #CannesYaman, #SaraBluma, and #RomeNights were trending. But there was more to the story. Just as the images went viral, fans noticed something else. Guldem, the woman long rumored to have been close to Cannes in recent months, was reportedly spotted at the airport heading to Rome as well. The timing was impossible to ignore. "What are the chances?" wrote one fan on Twitter. Cannes and Sara together, and Guldem suddenly flying to the same city? Something's happening. Witnesses described the scene at the restaurant as intimate but careful. Sara reportedly leaned close to Cannes several times during their dinner, laughing quietly while he kept his voice low, often glancing toward the windows as if aware of the world watching outside. "It wasn't just two friends catching up," said one source who works near the venue. "There was something more, like old sparks reigniting." By morning, tabloids across Italy were running with the headline, "Can Yaman's night with Sara, hidden dinner or new beginning?" The story spread fast, but the most shocking part was still to come, a second set of photos from later that night, showing them leaving the same hotel. The next morning, Italian tabloids had their golden headline moment, "Midnight in Rome, Cannes and Sara leave the same hotel." The photos, snapped by an anonymous source and sold to a major gossip outlet, showed Yaman and Sara Bluma exiting the luxurious Hotel de Russi just minutes apart. Cannes was in a casual black hoodie and baseball cap, while Sara wore a long beige coat, her hair tucked behind her ear, trying to hide her face from the flashing lights. But it was too late, the world had already seen enough. Social media erupted in chaos. "So they really spent the night together?" one fan wrote. "Maybe it's just coincidence," another argued. But the tone online was clear, nobody believed it was just work. And just as the story began to explode, a new twist sent everyone into overdrive. Guldem had arrived in Rome that same morning. Photos taken at Fiumicino Airport showed her looking composed but tense, wearing sunglasses and carrying a small overnight bag. She didn't stop for interviews, didn't respond to questions, but her silence spoke volumes. "She looked determined," one reporter said. "Like someone with unfinished business." By noon, entertainment networks were already speculating on a confrontation. Was Guldem aware of Cannes' dinner with Sara? Did she come to Rome to fight for him? Every outlet had a different story. Some insiders claimed Guldem and Cannes had grown distant in recent weeks, others said they were still in touch. But one thing was clear, she hadn't come for tourism. Meanwhile, Sara stayed completely silent. No posts, no reactions, no denials. Her team declined to comment, saying only, "Sara doesn't respond to personal matters." But paparazzi footage showed her later that day meeting briefly with a stylist friend, and her expression said everything. She looked shaken. She wasn't expecting that level of chaos, a witness recalled. It was supposed to be a quiet dinner. Now it's a national scandal. As the media frenzy intensified, Cannes' management went into damage control, trying to frame the night as a friendly meeting between two professionals. But no one was buying it. That evening, as Guldem's car was spotted near Cannes' hotel, photographers rushed to the scene, hoping for the ultimate confrontation. And what happened next, no one could have predicted. That night, Rome's calm turned electric. Outside the Hotel de Russi, the same hotel where Cannes and Sara had been seen earlier, a small crowd of reporters gathered, waiting. Around 10:40 p.m., a black car stopped near the entrance. Out stepped Guldem. She wasn't hiding anymore. Her expression was cold, her stride confident, and she walked straight inside, ignoring the flashing cameras. "It was like watching a movie," said one witness. "You could feel the tension in the air." Inside the hotel lobby, staff later confirmed that she went directly to the private suite Ken had been using during his stay. No one knows exactly what happened behind those closed doors, but the few minutes that followed changed everything. According to a hotel staff member who overheard parts of their conversation, voices were raised, not in anger, but in heartbreak. "She kept asking him why," the source said. "And he said something like, 'It's not what it looks like.' But the timing, the photo, the dinner, it all spoke louder than his words." There was silence after that, the source continued. "And then she left without looking back." Within an hour, Guldem was seen exiting the hotel, visibly emotional. Cameras captured her wiping away tears before stepping into her car. By midnight, the footage was everywhere. The next morning's headlines were brutal: "Heartbreak in Rome, Guldem confronts Ken after Sara night out." Meanwhile, Sara had vanished. Sources close to her confirmed she left the city early that morning, heading back to Milan. No one saw her at the airport, no posts on social media, no comments. It was as if she'd disappeared completely. But in the silence she left behind, rumors only grew louder. Sara didn't want drama, one of her stylists told a reporter. She just wanted closure. The world, however, refused to let go. Fan pages started comparing Guldem's arrival to a scene from a romance film. Others speculated whether this was all a misunderstanding, or the end of something that had barely begun. Through it all, Ken stayed quiet. No interviews, no statements, no social media. But that night, a single photo surfaced from the hotel's terrace, Ken standing alone, cigarette in hand, staring at the city lights. The caption under one viral tweet said it all: "When you realize silence is the loudest answer." The fallout was immediate and brutal. By sunrise, every major magazine in Italy and Turkey had the same headlines splashed across their covers: the Rome Triangle, Ken, Sara, and Guldem. The internet had declared war, dividing itself into sides. #Team Sara and #Team Guldem trended simultaneously, each defending their favorite woman and dissecting every frame, every word, every tiny gesture. The pressure on Ken was unbearable. For the first time in months, he cancelled a public appearance. The charity gala he'd been scheduled to attend. His team claimed personal reasons, but everyone knew the truth. "He didn't want to face the cameras," said one insider. "He looked exhausted, mentally, emotionally. He said, 'Whatever I say now, they'll twist it.'" Meanwhile, Guldem had already flown back to Istanbul, but not before posting one cryptic message on Instagram. A simple black background with the words, "Some truths are better left unspoken." Within minutes, her followers exploded. Was it aimed at Ken? At Sara? Or both? She didn't elaborate, she didn't have to. Sara, on the other hand, made her first public appearance 2 days later at a fashion event in Milan. Normally radiant, she looked more fragile than ever. When asked about the rumors with Ken, she smiled faintly and said, "Some people enter your life to remind you what you truly want." The room went silent. Those who knew her best said it wasn't anger, it was resignation. The once sparkling chemistry that the world loved watching between her and Ken now seemed like a shadow of the past. Meanwhile, entertainment programs kept replaying clips of all three, cutting between Guldem's tearful exit, Sara's quiet strength, and Ken's haunting silence. "It's like watching heartbreak in real time," one host said live on air. Even Ken's closest friends struggled to defend him. "He's human," one said anonymously. "He didn't plan any of this. It just happened." But the damage was done. Sponsorship deals were paused, fans demanded answers, and journalists camped outside his home in Rome. Then, out of nowhere, a rumor emerged that changed the tone completely: Sara had reached out privately to Guldem. Not to fight, claimed one source, but to talk. No one believed it at first, until something unexpected appeared online: both women had started following each other again on Instagram. The internet went into meltdown. Were they teaming up? Forgiving? Or simply choosing peace? Whatever it was, it shook the entire narrative, and left only one person still silent. Days passed, and the silence became deafening. Paparazzi waited outside his apartment, news vans parked by the street, and yet, nothing. Yaman hadn't posted, spoken, or even been seen. The mystery only made the fire burn hotter. Then, on the fifth night, it happened. At 11:27 p.m., Kim broke his silence with a single Instagram story. A dimly lit photo of a half-empty wine glass beside a candle, captioned simply, "Truth doesn't need to scream." Within minutes, the internet erupted. Is this a message to Sara? Is he defending Guldem? Nobody knew, but everyone had an opinion. The image went viral in under an hour, spawning hundreds of theories. Some fans said the photo was taken at the same terrace where Sara had once been photographed during a past project. Others insisted it was from his own apartment in Rome, where he had spent days in isolation. Regardless of the truth, one thing was clear: the quiet, poetic tone felt like classic Can. The next morning, Italian morning shows dissected it frame by frame, calling it his emotional statement to the world. But that wasn't the only shock. Just hours later, a gossip journalist revealed something unexpected: Sara and Guldem had both agreed to refuse interviews about the scandal. They made a pact, the journalist claimed. Neither will add fuel to the fire. That small act of solidarity stunned everyone. In an industry where silence is rare, two women who were supposedly rivals had chosen dignity instead of revenge. And for the first time, the public's anger shifted, not toward them, but toward the media circus that had blown everything out of proportion. Can's team finally released a short statement the following day. Personal lives are not meant for public judgment. There was no betrayal, only misunderstanding. Respect will be appreciated. The message was calm, measured, and effective. Within hours, articles began changing tone. Was it all exaggerated? Asked one Italian paper. Maybe what we saw was never what it seemed. Yet behind the calm surface, one question still echoed among fans: what really happened that night in Rome? No one knew for sure. But one clue emerged days later. A fan spotted Sara's assistant at the same cafe where Can was filming an ad shoot. They didn't meet, she said. But they smiled when they noticed each other. Whether it was coincidence or closure, no one could tell. But it felt like peace, the kind that comes when storms finally end. The Rome scandal slowly faded from the headlines, but its shadow lingered long after the cameras turned away. For Can, it wasn't just another rumor, it was a mirror. A reflection of how fame could twist truth, how one night could erase years of effort, and how silence, once his shield, had become his loudest statement. Friends close to him said he changed after that week. He spoke less, worked more, and started turning down interviews that asked about his personal life. He became calmer, said one close colleague. He told us, "I don't owe anyone explanations for what I feel." And yet, traces of the emotional storm were still there. In his eyes, in the way he paused before answering questions, in the quiet tone that replaced his once fiery temper. He poured himself into his projects, but something in him seemed softer, humbled by the chaos that fame had created around him. Meanwhile, Sara Bluma quietly resumed her work, channeling her energy into humanitarian campaigns and fashion collaborations. She never mentioned Can again, but her captions grew more thoughtful, about peace, boundaries, and letting go. Some stories are meant to end without villains, she wrote in one of her posts. Fans knew exactly what she meant. Guldem, too, found her own closure. A few weeks later, she shared a single black and white picture of the sea with the words, "Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about forgiving life for surprising you." It was the final note to a story that had consumed millions, a story of love, misunderstanding, and human fragility. Then, out of nowhere, Can appeared at a charity event in Rome, weeks after disappearing from public view. Reporters described him as different. No flashy smile, no rehearsed charisma, just calm, polite, grounded. When asked if he regretted anything about what happened, he gave a small, tired smile and said, "Regret doesn't change the past. But gratitude helps you understand it." That line became the headline of the day, a poetic ending to a scandal that had once seemed unstoppable. The world, once obsessed with the triangle of Can, Sara, and Guldem, finally moved on. But for those who had followed every moment, it remained a symbol of how even under the blinding light of fame, people could still choose grace over chaos. In the end, there were no winners or losers. Just three hearts that crossed paths in the wrong moment, under the wrong stars, and somehow still managed to walk away with their dignity intact. As the sun set over Rome weeks later, Ken was seen again, this time alone, walking by the Tiber River. No cameras, no crowd, just him, quietly watching the reflections of the city lights on the water. For the first time in months, he looked peaceful. And maybe that was the real truth behind it all, that sometimes, after all the noise, all the heartbreak, all the scandal, peace is the only thing worth keeping.